Welcome to MBA Live. I'm your host, Rob Van Raphorst. We are in the middle of a big presidential election season, and we're hearing a lot of issues talked about. But one that is noticeably absent is housing. Here today to talk about it is our president and CEO, David Stevens. Dave, thanks for being here.
Good to be here, Rob.
Dave, why isn't housing a bigger issue in this presidential season than we're hearing about?
You know, I think housing is one of the most overlooked subjects that the presidential candidates are avoiding. I think they fail to realize that we're really in the midst of what could be the next great crisis for this country. We've got tens of millions of Americans spending far too much of their paycheck just to make rental payments. We have a void in building new affordable rental properties, and likewise we have a void in building new affordable first-time homeowner properties in this country. So while the housing market's recovering, I think the presidential candidates are missing the real story beneath this. And we've been talking, with each of the candidates to try to get them to begin discussing it. We're starting to see a little of it, but not enough.
What do we need to do to maybe get private capital back into the system? I mean, there's a lot of government support as is, but really it's about getting private capital back, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of public-private partnership programs. That's a lot of P's, but
right.
There's a lot of programs that have existed over the years that have encouraged investment in the kinds of properties we need to create for the entry-level household. And again, whether rental or owned, these opportunities exist. I'll just talk about tax credits as a clear example. The Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program creates an incentive for multifamily developers to build affordable rental properties. We need to expand that. That's a program that could fundamentally help build more units for the rental community, something that's clearly going to be needed as we move forward. And there's a variety of other incentive programs that could equally help spur on first-time home ownership in a way that could actually be really important to build communities and build tax revenues and build stability in the communities across the country.
What can we do in terms of rental assistance? I mean, there's a lot of renters right now in the United States. That's an issue I think that we need to focus more on.
Yeah, and I know for many people who care about MBA issues, they don't spend necessarily a lot of time thinking about what's happening to the dearth of affordable rental housing in this country. Rental assistance is really important to this. The percentage of Americans that live below the poverty line in rental properties is absolutely terrible, and it's creating other social challenges to communities across the country. Rental assistance has been a program that's been used for decades. Section 8, you've all heard about, either on a project-based level or a voucher-based level. The problem is that budget is stalled. That's a fixed amount of money, and then while it gets renewed in budget cycles, it's not keeping pace. We're losing thousands of units every year as a result of the program not growing to add new housing. It's just barely adjusting for the cost of inflation and the cost to maintain properties today. So we need to be thinking about how we think about subsidies for rental housing, because ultimately that brings more stability to communities overall. It's really important to those who even only focused on home ownership today as a profession to recognize that we've got to have the balance right as well for affordable rental housing in this country.
One last question. What do we do about millennials, the first-time home buyer, and sort of mixing the two? Because, I mean, until we sort of address this issue, we're going to have long-term problems, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've covered three key points, right? The first point is we need to create public-private partnerships to create incentives to build more affordable rental housing in communities across the country. Two, we need to think about how we help support renters who are living below the poverty line today who can barely make ends meet. And third, we need to focus on that third leg of the stool, which is the home ownership side. And there are opportunities to think about the purchase market where we can use incentives. We can use tax incentives. We can use matching savings programs. There are a lot of opportunities for the next administration to think about how we create opportunities for first-time home buyers. It won't stop there, by the way. We need incentives for builders to build entry-level housing. That's a whole nother set of conversations. But these are fairly simple policies that have worked in the past and can work going forward that can allow, I think, a presidential candidate on either side of the aisle to begin to use this as a sort of a stump speech message for the middle class of America who are being impacted by their inability to access the kind of housing that others are able to get access to today.
We'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to check up on any news from MBA on our Twitter at MBA Mortgage, or check us out on Facebook at Mortgage Bankers Association. Until